Did the prosecution do a good job in pre-butting what the defense is going to argue when it makes its case starting next week?
Well, the best effort they made was obviously on the medical testimony, because it was predicted that it was going to be about cause of death and causation issues. So I think that the prosecution did a lot there. But at the end of the day, having been there, and Paul knows this, and we know that there will be other experts who have credentials that will come forward and give a different statement. And that statement will sound as reasonable as the statements that the prosecution has presented. So to my way of thinking, sure, they did a good job of trying to preempt it, but at the same time, the defense has a good chance to put forth their case. I'm not so certain they could prevail here. I think the real question ultimately is going to be going ultimately to the question of disproving that Chauvin had the intent. He may have, and that statement is buttressed by the fact that he said afterwards that he was a very strong guy and I was trying to keep him under control. Jurors hear that statement, even if they heard nothing else, they will then wonder whether or not he intended to hurt this man or kill this man, but whether he was really had real concerns about him being under control. If I'm the defense, I'm looking at it from that point of view.
Paul, I want to have you listen to defense attorney Nelson and one of his hypotheticals that he put out there. Have a listen.
Let's assume you found Mr. Floyd dead in his residence. No police involvement, no drugs, right? The only thing you found would be these facts about his heart. What would you conclude to be the cause of death?
In that very narrow set of circumstances, I would probably conclude that the cause of death was his heart disease.
I could be laying by the pool in Florida, right? On my stomach in the prone position, not inherently dangerous.
Right.
And there could be a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. What is he doing?
He's being a bad lawyer to my law students. Kids, don't try this at home. Jonathan, the autopsy says the cause of Floyd's death was failure of his heart and lungs. It doesn't use the word asphyxia, which is the prosecution's theory. So all the other medical experts, other than the medical examiner, say asphyxia, but the defense is trying to exploit this tension to tell the jury if these well-qualified experts can't agree on what killed Mr. Floyd, that's reasonable doubt. The thing is, the medical examiner's testimony doesn't give the defense a lot to work with. He reinforced what all the other medical experts have said, that George Floyd would not have died on Memorial Day 2020 but for his fatal encounter with Derek Chauvin.
Panel, I'm going to switch gears here for something that is truly bothersome. Last week, I said during my byline that there's nothing more nightmarish for an African-American, particularly an African-American man, than a traffic stop. So as the nation is riveted by the trial we're talking about, new video has emerged of an Army officer being held at gunpoint by two police officers in Windsor, Virginia, during a traffic stop in December.
Get out of the car!
What's going on?
Get out of the car now!
What's going on?
What's going on is you're fixing to ride the lightning, son.
Get out the car!
You received an order. Obey it.
I'm honestly afraid to get out. Can I?
Yeah, you should be. Get out.
Cannot tell you how enraging that is. Second Lieutenant Karen Nazario says he was pulled over for not having a permanent license plate, though he says he had a temporary one that was clearly visible. He admits not immediately pulling over and driving a short distance until he could find a well-lit spot. Thank God he did. Video of the incident provided by Nazario's attorney shows police with their guns drawn, administering pepper spray, and eventually striking and handcuffing the Army officer. Nazario has filed a federal lawsuit against the officers. NBC has reached out to the police department in Windsor, Virginia, but has not received a response. Jill Winebanks, from what I understand, you changed your pin that you were going to wear on the show this morning. You changed it to Black Lives Matter. I want everyone to react to what we just saw, but Jill, you go first.
It was horrifying. It is a constant reminder of the danger of driving while black, of walking while black, of jogging while black. We have to do something to stop this. No one who looks like me would have been subjected to that. He drove for about 1 mile to get to a lighted area, which is a completely justifiable thing. He put his own camera on his dashboard and recorded what was happening, as did obviously the body cams. And it looks to me like there must have been a cam in the gas station from the angle. There's just nothing to be said about the appropriateness of what happened. The reference to the lightning has to do with the electric chair. And that's a pretty serious threat. And then they threatened him with ruining his Army career. This was a man in uniform who had done nothing. And the license plate is visible in the video that you see. So they had no reason to even pull him over. And then to get out and pull a gun, it's unspeakable. It is just horrible. And at a time when we're going through the George Floyd murder trial of Derek Chauvin, nothing could be more compelling to say we have to do something about policing in America.
Mr. Burris, the other thing that is so terrifying to me, and I mean, just give me a moment here, because I avoided watching any of that video for days now, because that's my biggest fear. And what happened to that Army officer, they tell him to get out of the car, but they also tell him to put his hands out the window, but they give him conflicting information. And that's why I said, thank God he went to a lighted spot, because imagine if they were on a darkened part of the road, what would have happened to him if he had complied? And I am so sick and tired of hearing people, particularly white people, say, well, if only they complied. Well, if you do what they say, you'll be fine. And we see right there that no, not even an Army uniform can protect you from law enforcement. Mr. Burris.
No question about it. This is not an atypical situation, I can guarantee you. This happened here and it's recorded, but it happens often all throughout the United States. There have been many cases like this. And I can tell you that a minor case like this could have a very tragic incident, that this young man could have been shot and killed if he had made the wrong move at the point in time. Pulling their guns out was totally inappropriate, because once you pull your guns out, you leave yourself very few options. And that option, if the person says something you don't like or does some move you don't like, the first thing you do is you shoot and kill them. So this was, to me, a very outrageous situation. And it was appropriate that the person moved and got to a lighter place. But at the same time, it was a confusing situation. This requires this department to go back and talk to these officers and make sure these officers do not give conflicting instructions, because that's how you get people killed, because they don't know how to handle it, what next to do. So for me, it was a very dangerous situation potentially. And more importantly, it's the kind of thing that happens routinely in a lot of urban areas.
And Paul, I'm going to give you the last word quickly. It wasn't lost on me that we also saw in the Derek Chauvin trial, guns were pulled on George Floyd the moment they got to his car window. Paul, last word to you.
These two officers who engaged in this racial profiling and excessive force, every day that they remain on the streets is a dangerous day for people of color in Virginia. There's got to be an independent investigation. This police department has not been transparent or accountable. It cannot be trusted to police itself.
Absolutely.
And with that, we're going to have to leave it there. Paul Butler, Jill Wine-Banks, and John Burris, thank you all for coming to the Sunday Show.